That's good. Sorry. Do my introduction one more time. So everybody who, they did hear your introduction, right, Sarah? Yes. Did everybody hear the introduction from Sarah? So we have with us my good friend Hassan Patel. I'm sorry that the tech is not working particularly well. Hassan is a former BBC, Al Jazeera journalist. Right now working for the Balanced Economic Project as the head of comms and engagement. Yeah, and Hassan has worked with academics as well at some other universities. So we're going to hopefully talk about some of those issues as we have our conversation today. So Hassan, thank you again. Sorry you've got to do your introduction one more time. Yeah.
It's not a problem. This is the benefits of having technology.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work.
Okay.
It's funny because today I'm talking about writing, but I just want to say something before that, if it's okay, Stephen.
Okay, it's okay, yeah.
You've been doing a lot of talking recently.
Yes, I have been doing
knocking on doors.
Yes.
And canvassing, because you ran an election yesterday.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you didn't win.
I did not win my election, no.
But nevertheless, in this day and age,
yeah.
for someone to go out there and talk and knock on doors and actually put themselves forward for public service, it's a big thing. So even though you didn't win,
yeah.
you did win morally.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yes, one of the things actually I want to talk about today is about the connection between writing and speaking.
Yes.
Maybe before we start, could you just talk a little bit about what your role is now in your current post, and then we'll talk about writing.
Sure.
From there.
So I've had a bit of a love-hate relationship with writing. Most of my jobs over the years has involved a lot of writing. So I started as a journalist at the BBC. Worked there for a few years, and I moved to Al Jazeera, and of course I'll kind of go into detail later on. And then subsequently I moved into communications, and I was I was a media manager at the University of Birmingham, worked for a couple of NGOs, then I was deputy director of Birmingham Newman University as well. But now currently I'm the head of media and engagement for Balanced Economic Project, which is a startup think tank looking at monopoly and antitrust and showing how companies, if they have so much power, what the economic downturn is, what the economic consequences are. And a good example is just a few days ago, the Amazon cloud went down.
Right, yeah.
That affected around 60% of companies who use that.
Right.
So it just shows how when very few have power, what it means for everyone else.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, that's a good. We'll come back to that. We'll talk a little bit about the different kinds of writing that you've worked on. But I'm always interested in when I think about writing, kind of how I came to writing. It goes back, to my childhood, right, and the kind of reading and writing you like to do. So I want to travel back in time in Hassan's childhood or young adulthood and ask sort of when do you really remember becoming aware of writing as a thing that was that you enjoyed reading or that you enjoyed doing yourself?
So I remember just down the road, my grandfather used to live in Witton, and even though I'm from Walsall originally, I spent most of my childhood at my grandparents' house just down the road. And I'm not sure if it was a way of keeping me quiet, but he'd give me £1 on a Saturday and say, go to the shop, buy the Times, the Daily Mirror, and I'd get 25p out of that £1 left for myself.
Okay.
And I'd buy a chocolate bar.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'd go home and Grandad would basically get the Daily Mirror and then he'll give me the Times and say, okay, read the front page and then tell me what it says.
Okay.
So that kind of got me interested in reading. I had to not only read, but read it in English and then digest it in Gujarati to tell my grandfather.
So you were sort of translating into Gujarati for your grandfather.
And he could read English, but I think he just wanted a bit more context.
Yeah.
And then that kind of got me interested in reading newspapers. I mean, this was before the mobile phone. This was in the 90s. And subsequently, I remember at the age of 10, my granddad got me a notebook. And I don't know why, I wrote a news story on the Gulf War.
Oh, really? Okay.
Just like Britain and America attacking Iraq or, to liberate Kuwait. And then I started writing small kind of news, I kind of thought I was a journalist. And I actually ended up writing news stories in this green booklet, which subsequently I've lost. And that kind of got me involved or interested in writing. And then you move into school and then English, reading certain books. I remember reading George Orwell, Animal Farm, and then
Yeah.
Silas Marner
Yeah, yeah.
by George Eliot,
Yeah.
Shakespeare, Henry V. And I think that kind of interest in not only reading but then writing just kind of increased.
Right.
And then as my A-levels ended, I should have been a normal, typical Asian lad and do what my cousins did or even what my siblings did and come to Aston and do pharmacy, business or economics. But I ended up doing history and politics instead at the University of Leicester.
Okay.
So suddenly you're kind of morphing into humanities, which means less of the theory, more of the writing.
Right.
And it just, that passion in me then actually made me start writing journals.
Okay.
So I kind of once in a while still kind of write into journals, which
Okay.
is a personal thing.
Yeah.
But then as you kind of, then you look to see, okay, what can I do with my career? And that's how journalism came to me.
Right.
Even though the irony is I ended up starting as a BBC trainee journalist for radio,
Okay.
because I've got the face for radio and the voice for TV, as they say.
You got your face is fine. It's a great face.
And yes, and I think the key thing is that I genuinely love reading opinion pieces or articles from individuals who expressively write in a good way.
Right. Well, you've got us right on to the next question, which I sort of, as I think back on kind of my history of reading and writing, that I had this kind of moment where I was thinking about what was a good reading that I was, the good writing that I was reading, and then what I started to recognize as good writing for myself, what I wanted, and there was a kind of, obviously a balance between what I thought was sort of original about my own writing, and then what was good about other writers that I was somehow trying to imitate. And so I wonder, like, as you were thinking about good writing, what developed as an idea of good writing, what you have any ideas about that, or sort of memories about that specifically?
I remember a university lecturer once at the University of Leicester conducted a master class on writing essays, and he said something really interesting, which was that, not everybody's going to be a writer that will create page turning for each. Oh, this is interesting. This is good. But everyone's got their own style, and you need to create what your own style is. But nevertheless, the key thing is that to construct an argument, answering the question, but ending with a solution.
Okay.
And that's something that I've constantly done throughout my writing career. Of course, I couldn't do that as a journalist because that's a different area which I can go into later. But fundamentally, it was like some people just write for the sake of writing. So someone sent me yesterday an article that they wrote for a Substack, and they asked me to check it. And I replied back saying, doesn't make sense.
Okay.
And then he goes, why? I said, there's no structure. I don't know what your main goal is, and there's no solution at the end. It's just a rant. So that made me actually think for today that that shows how my writing has developed. That you actually then start seeing these things in other people, and I think it's the fundamental thing is in writing is keeping it simple.
Yeah. Okay. But that problem solution kind of model is, I think that's in academic writing is something that we think about quite a bit as well.
Yes.
Like we're starting off with an idea, and we're in some ways always trying to solve some problem,
Yeah.
and coming to some solution. Whether or not that's the solution is actually the focus of it, or the analysis itself is the thing that we're doing. But it's interesting. You talked about a little bit about journalism. You talked about Substack articles. We talked about newspaper articles. In terms of thinking about those in terms of different genres, you have a clear idea when you think to yourself, okay, right, I'm writing a newspaper article. There's a very clear structure to that compared to this Substack. Is it still? I guess what I'm asking is it still basically that problem solution thing in different formulas, or do you see them as different kinds of things?
I think not each genre of writing can actually help with solutions. Sometimes you just got to report the facts or just or write the facts. I remember my former colleagues at Al Jazeera would always joke with me because they knew which articles were mine.
Okay.
Short sentences.
Yeah, short sentences. That's a good sign, isn't it?
Hassan came to Aston University.
Yeah.
Hassan spoke to Stephen.
Yeah.
It's like, and that actually, one of my, and he's actually a former colleague, a really good journalist in the USA called Azad Issa. He said something really profound about that. He goes, what he liked about it was the fact that how it was short, sharp, and sweet.
Okay.
Whereas journalists and some writers like to just waffle, and waffle.
Right, right.
And I always try and write in a way where it's short.
Mm-hmm.
Because the attention span, we're competing against TikTok,
Yeah.
cat videos,
Yeah,
you know, Big Brother videos. So we need to kind of constantly do things to be more innovative to try and get that point across.
Yeah, it's funny. I've just been reading Gabriel Garcia Marquez's Love in the Time of Cholera, which is like exactly the opposite of this, which is this kind of, he has these sentences that just like, they just spin round and round and round and round and round and round. And I find myself like really almost lost in them in a way. But I think actually, if you look at the structure of those sentences, there's still a kind, and it's in translation as well, I guess, which is different, but there's still something that simplicity still exists on the clause level, maybe, or that the way that it's being presented is being presented in a way that it's digestible in some way. But yeah, I think you think that shortness is just on the sentence level. Are you also thinking on, I guess I'm asking, do you have an idea of like a number in your mind of like how many words is too long of a sentence, or how much of a breath is too long of a sentence or a paragraph?
I always try and, when I write articles, for example, I always try and have yet the 1,000 word, 1,100 mark.
Okay.
I try not to go beyond that.
Yeah.
Mainly due to attention
Yeah.
spans. But in terms of sentence writing
Yeah.
in itself, look, you know, Tolstoy, War and Peace,
Yeah, yeah.
similar to your experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd rather watch you on TV than read it because of how if you know what I mean.
It's a great book.
It is a great book, and I read it, but that's a good example of like performative writing of like
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not, again, it was translated, but I guess when he wrote it in Russian,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of it was descriptive.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just about the characters; it was about everything around the characters as well.
It is interesting that we're getting sort of into that, like War and Peace is an interesting example, but some of those really long Russian novels were serialized, right? So originally when they were published, they weren't actually meant to be read as like we had this idea of War and Peace as being this like big novel, but like the idea that you would read like a chapter of it every time that the journal came or whatever, and it would be this kind of, it was a bit more presumably like watching Breaking Bad, right, where you watch one episode a week for 9 years or whatever. So I wonder actually if we have this idea that attention spans has shifted, but maybe have
Yes.
they really? I wonder. You think they have?
They have. So I remember when I started off in comms,
Yeah.
I remember you'd see press releases 3-4 pages long.
Okay.
And you'd think, okay, now, I mean, I don't personally believe that press releases are needed because of the way we do our communications. But nevertheless, if a press release is needed, you know, I would always kind of say font Calibri size 11, 1A4.
That's it.
That's it. And when I give advice to organizations in terms of responding to a particular issue or commenting on something, I just say to them, cut the waffle,
Yeah.
just give me the quote.
Yeah.
People know what's going on. The
Yeah.
headline will highlight that. For example, just a classic example, the Harborne Community Association responds to.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the headline.
Yeah.
So you're responding, and then there's the quote. We don't need the waffle because
Yeah.
you're sending it to outlets who already know what the waffle is. And
Right,
I think it saves time, but more importantly, it just shows the evolution of communications.
Right.
And I remember a good example of a debate that took place around 12 years ago. You know, I'm a football person.
Yeah.
And my beloved Manchester United.
Yeah. They're a soccer team, actually. I've heard.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I had a 100% record of never losing a game when I visited Old Trafford. But I took Stephen with me once, and we lost my first ever game.
I'm a bad luck. I think it's probably because I kept referring to it as soccer just to wind you up.
But it's football. But I remember when Manchester United sacked their manager David Moyes in 2013.
Yeah.
They made the announcement on Twitter.
Okay. Yeah. So this is the question that I had. You just said, so we're talking about how things have changed over time, and you said we don't need press releases, or you'd prefer not to have a press release. Why is that? Do you think that it's easier to get the message out in a different way now?
I think there's three factors. Number one is the evolution of communications. With technology, things change before you write a wrong press release. You fax it to the newsroom. The newsroom will look at it and then take copy and make copy, etc.,
Right, right.
etc. And I remember doing that when I was a journalist at the BBC Radio Leicester and BBC WM about 14 years ago. That's the first reason. The second reason is attention span.
Yeah.
People just don't have they do have the time, it's just that they don't use it in the right way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my perspective. And the third reason is the 24-hour news cycle.
Right.
I can't remember what happened 2 days ago in the news. Do you? If you know what I'm trying to say,
No.
it's just
Yeah, yeah,
constant.
Churn, yeah.
So we're kind of living in the era of journalism to a certain
Yeah,
degree.
yeah,
But the worst part of it is the fact that people's attention span, people don't have the time, and the new technology just means that we have a lot more information out there,
Right.
but less of it's absorbed.
Yeah. So do you think then that if we're thinking about ways of being compelling as communicators, that writing is still relevant? It's a big question for a discussion about writing. Is it still relevant? How important is writing for a TikTok video?
I think, but before we kind of mention TikTok, I think currently at the moment data shows that one of the best performing websites is Substack.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Right.
And people write on Substack. I write on
both have-
Substack.
we both have Substacks,
We
yeah,
both
yeah.
have Substack accounts, and it's because you have an interest in something and you can find your natural allies
Right,
or, or your tribe
Yeah, yeah.
on Substack,
Right.
or sometimes the opposite side. But I think what's happened is a lot of people now, not a lot of people, I can't quantify that, of course, but individuals want a bit more context.
Right. Okay.
And I know I've just contradicted myself.
Yeah.
But for every 100 people, there may be 5 or 10 who think, oh, let me find a bit more.
Yeah.
So we're now kind of morphing ourselves into consumers of content.
Yeah.
And linking that to journalism, which is kind of something that I used to do, is that we all live in echo chambers all our lives. So this whole narrative about echo chambers, we all live in we're in an echo chamber now as we speak.
Right, right.
But nevertheless, it's about venturing out once in a while and
Yeah.
talking to the other side. But what's happened is journalism has now changed. You are now looking to find what you want to find. And that may mean reading those Substack articles.
Yeah, right.
And there is a demand out there. And the number of people that share Substacks makes me think, oh, that shows that it's usually the same type of person. Someone inquisitive, someone who's a professional, someone who wants to know a bit more, but is sick and tired of these 5-minute videos, 5-second videos.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned TikTok. My advice to you or any academic is, if you want to use TikTok, use it. But use it only for 2 reasons. Number 1, to get your message out. And number 2, as an extra add-on to what you're known to do.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about academic writing in a second. I guess I was going to say also about, in terms of attention spans, we seem like we've gone down to this TikTok video that's very short, but also like these super long podcasts, right? Where you have a podcast that goes on for 3 or 4 hours. And I wonder if also there's also something about the way that you consume that, right? If you're listening to a 3-hour podcast, you're probably doing something else, right? You're driving.
You're running,
yeah.
or you just have it on in the background.
Whereas a TikTok video, your attention is really focused on that. So there is something presumably about, if you're thinking about your communication, you're thinking about how someone's going to consume something is very important. Yeah.
I think that's the most fundamental thing. If you want students to consume your content, then you need to be slightly innovative. You need to kind of use social media. You probably need to break it down into small chunks. You need to kind of relate that to them. But nevertheless, one of the major accusations against academics, and I've had this problem with a few, apologies to say this, is that they think that people like myself dumb down their work.
Okay, right, yeah.
We don't dumb down your work.
Yeah.
What we do is basically try and increase the scope of people to consume that content.
Right.
And not everything is a QS ranking
Yeah.
paper.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you want the man on the street to understand it,
Right.
like for example clean air,
Yeah.
you can have all the academic discussions, but if you want the person who lives next to the flyover to understand it,
Yeah.
you need to kind of hone it to that person.
Yeah. I mean, I've as you mentioned, I've been dabbling in politics for the last month, and this does seem like a really important thing. Also, not just in terms of the simplicity, but if you have a call to action, you really can't in some ways, I think the idea about political messaging is you don't go to people asking for the content. You go with them with a call to action.
Yeah.
Do this thing, right? And in some way, that's an interaction with an audience. I think that's different from an academic's idea about an audience, which is that I'm bringing them something for them to consume and them to think about or whatever. We view all of the writers or all of our readers as like us in some way, that we really want to spend some time thinking it over. But actually, for most readers, you as a reader myself, right? I want to know what it is you're telling me, right? That's the whole point of it.
Yes, and also I think people who are reading, we're just in that kind of era where I think when we were young, we'd go to a library, we'd get 6 books, we'd go home and read them and bring them back.
Yeah, because we were nerds.
We were
Hassan and I were
nerds.
both nerds.
But it was also something that was, especially in the UK at that time, growing up, it was a fundamental thing in schools.
Right.
Reading.
Mm-hmm.
It shocks me that people don't read anymore.
Yeah.
They say they do read, but it's like, and is it a definition to say that you can read 10 articles in a day? Is that the same as reading a book?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Right,
I think reading in itself is an art, and some people read multiple books in one go. Some people read one book, but that helps in terms of positioning the mind of actually saying, okay, how can I construct my narratives in the same way?
Yeah.
So that's one issue, and I think the second issue is the fact that, and I could be wrong, is that the university structure has changed immensely. That do you still give out reading lists to students?
Yeah.
Yes.
The reading. Well, the reading lists we have now are they're electronic, and they are so focused on being able to click a link and it goes directly to the reading, and the student doesn't. There's no kind of requirement on the student anymore to go and find something.
So they don't have to go down the cellar in the library,
nothing
find
like that.
volume 4 of
Yeah.
Foreign Affairs
Maybe-
1989 and then
yeah.
print it out and read it.
Most of the
That's what I used to do.
is if it's not linked to, as
Yeah.
she says, like if it's not there, then maybe she said, well, that must be optional then, or I don't
Yeah.
need to. If it's too difficult, if there are barriers.
Yeah. Sorry, just to make sure that everyone can hear, Sarah was just saying that if there's any kind of barrier to people getting writing, we're also actually quite discouraged from doing that kind of, giving that kind of reading, because the expectation is that students should be able to have a quick access to something.
So another thing, and I'm sorry if I'm kind of just throwing things out here because it's just a free-flowing conversation.
Oh, so I've got points. We're
Okay.
moving there. We're getting there.
But AI and ChatGPT
yeah.
is a huge problem for writers.
Right.
Look, I don't have a problem with using AI, especially if it's in a if you've got your own persona, it's locked in. It's not like an open source like other outlets. But you're creating your persona, so if you put things in, it kind of writes in your way. But how many people write something initially and then use AI to modify it?
Right.
And how many people are just using AI and not modifying it?
Right.
There's a difference there.
Yeah, there is. Talk about what that difference is.
The difference is this: that if you're writing something yourself,
Yeah.
it's your AI in your mind that's doing it for you.
Right.
Now, you may want to tighten it. You may want to add a couple of extra points in it. You may want to research some information, and that's where AI comes in good use. So, for example, I wrote something recently about what's taking place at Villa Park down the road with the football ban, but I just wanted to know some examples of Maccabi Tel Aviv and history of violence. But I also wanted to know, has there been any form of violence in the area of Aston Villa? AI helps you with that information, but you need to verify it, double source check, etc., etc. And there's no harm in using AI to kind of construct those kind of narratives in your arguments.
Right.
But I do see it constantly on LinkedIn, long-winded essays, and you just think, you've just put that into AI.
Right.
And you haven't done the due diligence,
Yeah.
you haven't put the right prompts in.
Yeah.
And if they wrote it via AI and then put it on Notepad and put their own words or modified it or whatever, I understand, but this is like, I might as well just type in, write down the best way to write for academics and just give it to everybody.
Right. And that goes back to your point about having short and being concise,
Yes.
knowing your audience.
Yes.
AI is not. I mean, you can tell AI what the audience is, but it's not going to be able to have that same kind of embodied experience.
No,
that you
it's
have.
not going to have the same embodied experience. I mean, the articles that I try and write, I always kind of, I always construct in my mind who the audience tends to be. As you gathered, that a lot of the stuff that I write is about identity and politics of that nature. So I always kind of think to myself, there's two audiences that I'm always targeting. The minority communities, the Muslim community, the community that may be under siege, because a lot of the stuff I'm writing about that, but also allies,
Yeah, okay.
potential allies, people who may not be from that community but may sympathize with that issue. And so I always try and pivot my writing to those audiences. And I think that's what makes my articles short, sharp and sweet.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that, I mean, I also to the point that we were talking about earlier, this idea that you don't just write. You write in genres. That's one thing, but you write with the audience in mind.
Yeah.
So your starting point is, what is it that I want to say, and who is it that I'm going to be saying it to?
Yeah.
And I think also for our younger academics who are listening in on this call, that bit of it is important, to be thinking to yourself, okay, when I'm writing this sentence, I'm not just writing a sentence to go out into the universe and just like live by itself. It really is meant for some specific person to read.
Yeah. And I remember once you and I were having a conversation about your audiences.
Yeah.
Because you've got distinct audiences.
Yeah, yeah.
You've got your academic audience.
Right.
But as a community organizer, you've got a community organizing audience,
right.
which can vary from a middle class member of the church in
Right.
Harborne to a Bangladeshi woman in Los Angeles.
Right.
And yet you somehow manage to convince your arguments to both sides because you know who your audience is, and then you got your political audience.
Yeah.
And then you got your running audience.
Yeah. And what do they want to hear?
But then you cater for your running audience with your posts, which are short, like things on Instagram, for
Yeah.
example, which is
Right.
writing in
Yeah.
some ways. But then you do your blog for your academic community.
Yeah. But I guess that point is that you can, and Hassan was really useful for me almost exactly a year ago when I was revamping my website. You know, very clear, like just say you're doing these three things, and then when you're doing whatever it is that you're doing, think about yourself in relationship to that individual identity, right? So don't just think, well, this is something I'm doing as Stephen, and you know, it just is going out into the universe. Actually think, okay, this is a part of this this. Not campaign is maybe too strong of a word, but this kind of part of my life where I'm trying to accomplish some particular thing with the communication that I'm doing.
So good example is if I say to you Barack Obama, which three words come to your mind as a slogan?
Well, I'm a community organizer, politician, and writer. Yeah.
And what was his message? What was his hope? And yes, we can.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you think about Brexit, what three words come out? Take back control.
Yeah. Or get it done.
Get it done, or whatever.
It's always three, they're
The
very,
power of
very,
three.
yeah, the
Even
phrase
New
is-
Labour under Tony Blair,
Yeah.
people still talk about New Labour, and people
Yeah.
say, okay, well, what was the buzz kind of words that people remembered? Education.
Right.
So, in some ways, these political campaigns have actually helped some people kind of morph that into their writing as well.
Yeah.
Short, to the point.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the academic bit of it a little
Sure.
bit, because we have academics mostly listening in, but I mean, we have the kind of the core reading that we have to do, or the core writing that we have to do for journals, and that is a very kind of specific writing. But I wonder if also you think that writing, I'm always interested in people saying, well, we have to write this way for our academic audience. Do you really, though? I mean, I kind of wonder sometimes that actually people are trying to present themselves as being more clever, and they get wound up in writing these super long, confusing sentences.
The number of times I had debates with certain academics at, University of
At-
Birmingham,
Yeah.
mostly in the humanities part, was like, was that?
Yeah.
Or you're dumbing down my research. No, I'm not dumbing your research down.
Yeah.
But fact of the matter is, if you want this in the media, you need to kind of slightly tone it down a bit, and then talk. And I'm not saying this in a bad way, but as a normal person would talk.
Yeah. Right.
Which of course academics, this media training and et cetera, et cetera. But I remember I would always end up having a debate with an academic when I'd do a press release on their research. And I'd kind of really tone it down. I'm like, well, you want me to sell it to the world. I can't just give them your 547 page journal.
Yeah.
They're not going to read it.
Yeah.
So I need to kind of just deconstruct it, give the most compelling argument, but more importantly, write in a way of why should I care about your work?
Right. I have a kind of a bad experience with this actually as I think about it, where I had written an article for I probably shouldn't say which publication it was, but it was a kind of publication where academics write for a more general audience.
Sure.
And the headline came back. It was about sexual violence and perceptions of sexual violence, and it was a bit about like how students had difficulty talking about sexual violence and really kind of defining what counted as sexual violence and what didn't. And the headline came back is, students don't know what sexual violence is. And I went, whoa, 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 that really, there was a kind of a simplification of it that was...
Was that a news website by any chance?
Yeah, it was...
An academic journal news
Yeah.
website, academic news
Yeah,
website.
so they were trying to get a click, right?
Yeah, they were trying to get a click.
Well, what's the danger, I guess, is what I'm saying. So I'm the stupid academic. I'm like, Hassan, like this adjective is very important, and you're saying like we need to cut to the chase. At what point does cutting to the chase? In that case, I felt like that I had been in some way misrepresenting.
One of the things I always used to do with my comms work with academics was I'd always give them the final say.
Okay.
And if they didn't like the art, we'd have a debate, discussion,
Yeah.
dialogue. And if they had a valid point, I'd take that point on board. And I always felt that I would like to carry that academic on the journey with me.
Okay.
Because if I did some comms... So I remember once one researcher was doing some, I think it was a ref impact course as well actually, research about the health, Brexit and the impact it'll have on the NHS in not in England but actually Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Very, very legal in the way it was written, because it was a legal kind of research. And there was an event in Parliament and I wrote a press release on the research. And the academic was like, oh, I'm not sure about it. I said, listen, we just need to kind of normalize this. It's 2019, the peak of the Brexit debate. I was linking that, like, Brexit's going to open up a kind of worms in relation to the health service and supply chains and legal issues. And it was a conversation that I had with the academic, and it paid off for me because she then got interviewed on BBC Wales, BBC Northern Ireland, and BBC Scotland because of what the research was. So I kind of felt slightly vindicated. It worked.
Right, and I guess in some sense, that's a little bit of what we're trying to do, is we're trying to get that hook.
Yeah.
And then once we get the hook, then maybe we can engage people more with what it is that we're doing. But
exactly.
Yeah, I guess the one of the points about this is, and to your earlier point, is that it is so hard to get attention, right?
It's so hard to get attention, and I think we have to understand that to get that message out, we may have to kind of, I don't want to use the word dumb down, but understand what is it that the message you want to get out. I had a really interesting conversation with an academic friend just last week. He gave a soundbite for a BBC local story, and the soundbite was 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, great one. He goes, oh, I wanted to say more.
Yeah.
But that was a good soundbite.
Yeah.
Oh, but I wish they clipped me for about 3-4 minutes. I'm like, mate, the news story is 2 minutes 15.
Yeah.
You've had 15 seconds.
Yeah.
Count yourself lucky.
Yeah. I mean, that's a significant amount of time.
Exactly.
We have this idea sometimes as academics that, like, you get a quote or whatever, and you think, well, that's not very much, but actually, it's quite a bit.
It's quite a bit, and I mean, you mentioned a particular website. I'll mention it anyway, but if it's the right one, The Conversation.
Yeah. It wasn't The Conversation.
Oh, okay, that's good. But I did a lot of work with The Conversation when I was at the University of Birmingham, and I know academics do write for The Conversation. And one thing I like about The Conversation is that they've got people in there who've worked at a university, who've worked in the newsroom, and they actually carry the academic journey with them.
Yeah.
And if you get your work published in The Conversation, it's going out to such a wide crowd.
Right.
So I remember one academic wrote a long research, really powerful piece of research about, it's a very harrowing story actually, about the sex crimes against by UN soldiers in Puerto Rico.
Okay.
And I wrote the press release for her. There was a bit of to and fro, and then the article was published in The Conversation. And my challenge wasn't that. My challenge was that suddenly I'm getting phone calls from New York Times, BBC, Sky, Al Jazeera, wanting to interview her, and this academic goes, can I do it next week? I'm like,
No.
no, it's like, you know,
today.
this is an exclusive story.
Yeah.
It's got to happen
Yeah,
today.
I've had that sense too, sometimes with the marketing people, where
Yeah.
that our timelines as academics are really
Yeah.
not realistic.
Exactly.
And we don't, we always talk about the real world or whatever, but we really don't actually. We think like, oh, we'll do an interview tomorrow, and it's right now, actually. They're going to call you right now, and you need to be ready to speak.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think also, you know, with academics is like knowing your audience.
Right.
So another Ref Impact case study, again, it's research, which I think academics would appreciate, is somebody was doing some research on personal testimonies and how, for example, there's less and less first-hand voices now of people who lived through the Holocaust or experienced the Holocaust in that manner. You may get a handful of people who sadly were, you know, who saw the horrors, but they may have been kids.
Yeah.
If you look at the kind of the wider picture now.
Right.
So her research was what they're doing in relation to preserving that history in the Holocaust, but how other genocides, whether the one in Rwanda or Bosnia, can learn, gathering the information they can learn from
Right.
that.
Right. Yeah.
So I kind of said to the academic, you know, you need to target like those organizations that do this more than anyone else.
Right,
It's not a kind of a story in the Times.
Right.
But then the Auschwitz Museum Journal somehow got wind of her research from a press release, and then they asked her to write an article in that journal where she was very technical, but the audience was a technical audience.
Right.
Their job is to curate that information,
Right.
to preserve that information.
Yeah.
So sometimes it does pay out
Yeah.
in the right way.
Yeah. We're starting to come to the end here, but I'm just going to say, if you have any questions, if you can put them in the chat, and Sarah, if you can have a look at it, that would be great. I guess I wanted to, in the last 5 minutes, if we're giving advice to PhD students and early career researchers in terms of what they should be thinking about in terms of their communications. I don't know if it's strategy is the right word, or what kinds of things do you think are, if you're interested in getting your research out in the real world, what sorts of things should PhD students and early career researchers be thinking about in terms of different venues, the question actually I've written down here is, do we all need a TikTok talk?
No.
Okay.
You don't need a TikTok, but however, if you're doing some research which may need a bit of innovation, so for example, there's an academic at Birmingham Newman University who does work in terms of child psychology, and there was some research about pooping.
Okay.
Now that makes a nice little video for TikTok
Yeah,
to get
for
the
sure,
points across. Anand Menon, for example, who is an academic who led the some think tank looking at the Britain and Europe's relationship. Very topical at that time, and he kind of came on TikTok, you know, about 5 things wrong with Theresa May's plan or 5 things right with Theresa May's plan. But not each academic could do that. But I think you need to have 2 things in mind. Of course, what your arguments are, but more importantly, also who your audiences are.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for an academic audience, then fine, go for the kill. But that narrative might not work for Dave down the road.
Yeah. Right. And you're not going to use the same thing in both places.
No.
I mean, maybe sometimes academics think like, oh, I'll write this article and it will be picked up.
No,
It's not going to be, right?
it doesn't work like that. And you know, this is a very good example. Again, you know, there was one academic who just before COVID did some research where he said that one way to stop any respiratory illness is to wear masks. And the narrative is that in certain parts of the world, wearing a mask is actually they're protecting others from them.
Right.
But in the West, it's about civil liberties and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But he didn't want to do any press work. He just said, "Oh, send them a journal."
Yeah. So, yeah.
And I actually think that, you know, if that academic had listened to the advice that people gave to him just before the advent of COVID, I think he would have been on every single news channel talking about the importance of masks.
Wow, that is really interesting. So what would have been your advice to that person? Is it to do a press release? Is it to talk to? I mean, we have comms people here at the university, obviously. What steps, like what practical steps can we say? I've got some research that I think people might be interested in. What should
I think this first thing is that you have a fully fledged press office. You've got one at Aston. It's a very good one actually. Reach out to them. Sometimes they might say no.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be offended.
Yeah.
It's there's a news cycle. It might not be part of the news cycle.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to accept. Every single time an academic said to me, "Can I get this on Radio 4?"
Mm-hmm.
I'd be a millionaire.
Yeah.
For
You
every
could do
pound.
that, right? You could actually do that.
Exactly.
That'd be great. Yeah.
And so I'll give another example, and I think example is a good example. There was some research taking place at a university about Latin, and they did some great work with schools where they were talking to them or having Latin lessons. Now, they were like, "Oh, this will make a great piece for Radio 4 Today program." I'm like, nah. But I tell you what, it'd make a good story about for the BBC One show. It's a human story.
Yeah.
Latin being taught in an inner city school in Birmingham or
Yeah.
Manchester or whatever.
Yeah.
But what I found funny, and it was a funny anecdotal moment, the academic goes, "What's the One show? I only listen to Radio 4. And I thought,
See, probably, yeah. So there's something about academics. We also have to be connected to things.
exactly.
Yeah. Sorry.
Can I ask one of the questions?
Yeah,
that's
sure,
come
go ahead,
from the
yeah.
chat? So, just to thank our colleague Abdullah here, he's thank you for the valuable session, really finding
thank
it
you.
useful. He says, many of us are facing challenges to minimise daily life distractions, that kind of noise you were talking about earlier, and achieve creative writing, especially when the careers are requiring us to be so highly responsive, accessible online, accessible to the news cycle. And he'd like to know, do you have any recommendations for dealing with that noise and I guess sort of finding a way through it?
I think one thing academics could do is follow the news. And sometimes in that news cycle, there may be something connected to your work, to your research. If something is, I would say pick up the phone, call your press office, and shoot out a short little quote in response to that. And if the press office are competent, they can target the right media, and suddenly you've got this. So I'm going to give a good example, Abdullah, here. I remember once there was a lot of media engagement around the budget, and my narrative was that a university in the West Midlands shouldn't really be commenting on the budget nationally because they've got London, they've got Westminster, and they've got Millbank there where the academics can go. However, we can write on the local implications.
Okay, right.
But at the same time, I remember Angela Merkel, the former German Chancellor, announced her resignation. So one academic said to her, "Why don't you write me a little quote on the impact of Merkel in terms of politics?" It was the same day as the budget. We sent out all these, media quotes about response to the budget on this. Nothing got picked up.
Oh no. You got another fire alarm. Well, I think we're just about at the end of our time anyway. Sorry about this. This has not been a great day for this, but it's been a really great session. Hassan, thank you very much for.
So can I just finish on this?
Finish on the point here.
So basically, that little quote about Angela Merkel as a piece of, and this academic is a European German lecturer. She's British, but her specialism is Germany. That got picked up by the New York Times and the Times.
Oh wow, okay. So even though it was regionally focused, it ended up getting internationally as well. Okay, sorry everyone, we're having another fire alarm here. It's been we fought through. Hassan, thank you so much for fighting through with us. If you have any questions for Hassan, we have your contact. You can either email you or find you online. And
So if I tend if
LinkedIn is the best way
or
to do
if
it,
you want to by yourselves,
Yeah.
that's not a problem as
Okay.
well.
Excellent. I promised to everyone on the chat to drop your links in later so
Okay.
they can come back, find your links. I also think find Stephen's
Yes.
website, which I'm so glad to know that you are the inspiration behind those 3
It's
tabs.
very clear,
which
yeah,
work
very
so
clear
well.
thing, yeah.
Thank you
Okay,
so
well, thank you
much.
so much, Hassan. We appreciate it. We'll see you all later.
Thank you all.
Hopefully, we're not going to burn down here. All right, thank you all very much.
I have thanked people through the chat, so apologies. You probably better run.